Hi, boys and girls. Today is May the 14th. It's Thursday morning, and I hope you guys are up, bright, and ready for today's assignments. And we're going to be working on page 277 and 278. And the title of our lesson is Subordinating Conjunctions. What in the world does that mean, Miss Augst? Subordinating conjunctions. You're familiar with the word conjunctions, but subordinating, that's kind of a new thing, and we're going to be talking about that today. But before we begin, I'm going to start with a joke. What did the ocean say to the pirate? Nothing. It just waved. You get it? It just waves. Um, okay, I know, kind of corny, right? But today we're going to go ahead and get started on our lesson. Today, a clause. Let's begin at the beginning. A clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb. Okay, so we will go. That's a clause. It's a group of words that has a subject and a verb. An independent clause has a complete thought, so it can stand alone as a sentence. I mean, if we look at we will go, I mean, that's a sentence in itself. We will go. It has a subject and it has a verb. But what is a dependent clause? Well, let me back up for a second. An independent, if you're independent, you can be by yourself. You don't have to depend on someone else. So that's what I want you to think of for an independent clause. It's okay being by itself. It can stand alone. But what is a dependent clause? It does not have a complete thought. So it can't stand alone as a sentence. We can't call it a sentence. A dependent clause begins with a subordinating conjunction. Okay, this is when it gets a little bit tricky. What is a subordinating conjunction? Look at this box right here. It says common subordinating conjunctions. You've got after, although, as, because, before, if, since, though, unless, until, when, whenever, where, wherever, and while. These are subordinating conjunctions. So we're going to talk about these in just a second. So let's go back up here to dependent clauses. So this is a dependent clause. When it is time for recess. If you said that, if you were in my class and you just said when it is time for recess, I would say when it is time for recess what? I mean, it's not a complete thought. So that's why this dependent clause right here has to go with something else. It has to be put with a dependent clause to make it a complete thought. And how do you do that? You do that with subordinating conjunctions. So let's look at this. You got we will go outside. That's a dependent clause. This is an independent clause. And this when it is time for recess is a dependent clause. So look how they put them together with a subordinating conjunction. We will go outside when it is time for recess. Okay, so when it is time for recess was the dependent clause. We will go outside when it is time for recess. Or you could say when it is time for recess, comma, we will go outside. So again, I want you to look. You got this dependent clause put with this. You got this independent clause put with this dependent clause. Independent means it cannot stand alone. You cannot just say when it is time for recess. It has to be put with a dependent clause. Okay, so an independent clause becomes a dependent clause if the subordinating conjunction is added to the beginning of the clause. Okay, so let's look at this. I know this sounds confusing, but if you can get to where you understand, dependent means it has to have something else. Independent means it can be by itself, okay? Independent, it's by itself and it's fine being by itself. Dependent, it needs someone. It needs something, okay? Okay, so let's look at number 1. It says circle the subordinating conjunction. That's these guys. In each sentence, Write I if the underlying clause is independent, and write D if the underlying clause is dependent. Okay, sounds confusing, but it's going to be okay. All right, so although is a common subordinating conjunction. We're going to circle this guy right here. Although the Taj Mahal seems like a palace, comma, it is a great tomb. Although the Taj Mahal seems like a great palace, see, you couldn't, that doesn't stand by itself. You couldn't just say, that's not a complete thought, although the Taj Mahal seems like a palace. Okay, so we know that this right here, this clause is dependent. It's dependent on being joined together with a independent clause. Okay, so number 2. When Emperor Shah Jahan's wife died, he built a magnificent building for her tomb. Okay, so when is your subordinating conjunction. If you look up here, there it is right there. When. Okay, so when Emperor Shah Jahan's wife died, he built a magnificent building for her tomb. Okay, so we're only looking at the underlined part, the underlined clause here. He built a magnificent building for her tomb. Does that sound like a complete sentence? It does. So do you think that's dependent or independent? It's independent. It's by itself. It can stand as a sentence by itself. So this is going to be an I. Okay, number 3. The emperor wanted everyone to remember his wife because he loved her so much. The subordinating conjunction is because. If you look up here, there it is right there. Because. The emperor wanted everyone to remember his wife. Okay, that's the only part that we're looking at. They want to know, is this a dependent clause or a independent clause? Remember, independent means it can stand by itself. It is a sentence by itself. Is that a sentence? Is it a complete thought? The emperor wanted everyone to remember his wife. Yes. So that is independent. And number 4, she was buried in a nearby garden until the tomb was completed 22 years later. Okay, the subordinating conjunction is until. And if you'll look up above, there it is right there. Okay, so the only part that we need to look at now is the underlined part. The tomb was completed 22 years later. Do you think it's a sentence alone by itself? I mean, does that sound like a sentence? Yes, it does. So that means it is independent. It doesn't need anything else. It's independent. So that's an I. Okay, number 5. Before building could begin, talented architects made plans for the tomb. Before is the subordinate conjunction. If you look up above, there it is right there. So before building could begin, that's the part we have to look at because that's the underlined part. Before building could begin. That is not a complete thought. That is not a sentence alone like that. So, is he independent? Can he stand by himself? He doesn't need anyone else? No, he needs someone. He needs someone else to help him make him a complete sentence. So this underlying clause is dependent because it needs something else to make it a sentence. Okay, so let's look at number 6 and 7. Use subordinating conjunction to combine the sentences. Add a comma when necessary. Okay, so let's think. The tomb was being built. 20,000 people worked on it. The tomb was being built. 20,000 people worked on it. They want you to add one of these subordinating conjunctions. Well, we could say How about this? When, because that's one of the words up there. When the tomb was being built, comma, 20,000 people worked on it. Oops, forgot the ED. Worked on it. Okay, so when the tomb was being built, comma, 20,000 people worked on it. So we've answered or completed what they wanted us to do. It said use of subordinating conjunction, and that's what we did. Okay, so let's look at number 7. The emperor was buried in the Taj Mahal, period. His wife was buried there. Okay, so they want us to use a subordinating conjunction to make these one sentence. That's because that's what the conjunction does. It creates one sentence. So one of these is going to be dependent and one of them is going to be independent, but don't get confused on that. Okay, so what if we just start the emperor? We're just going to rewrite this just like it is. The emperor was buried. Oops, there we go. In the Taj Mahal. Okay, the emperor was buried in the Taj Mahal. How about let's look at the up here. It says his wife was buried there. Oh, what if we say the emperor was buried in the Taj Mahal because his wife was buried there? Okay, so we've fulfilled the requirements. We've included a subordinating conjunction because. Okay, so I hope that you can understand this. I know it's something new, and we're just going to take it a step by step. Here on the back page today, what I suggest is it says circle the subordinating conjunction. I would flip back and forth to that list on the front. It says write I if the underlying clause is independent, D if it's dependent, and just keep flipping back and forth to the definition of what an independent and a dependent is. And down at the bottom, 8 through 10, you're going to have to include, it says you have to put a subordinating conjunction in there to combine the sentences, because that's what a conjunction is. It takes two sentences and puts them together as one. And then you'll have to add a comma if necessary, okay? So I hope you have a great day today. It's almost the weekend, so that'll be nice. And if you have any questions, just let me know and I'll try to get back to you, okay? Bye-bye.